Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chairperson, let me assist the Honorable Member, America, that the ANC government has got programs that will be able to create jobs in South Africa. Firstly, we have the Skills Development Program that is funded through the Skills Development Fund through the Higher Education and Training. We also have the legislation on public employment services, of which it falls under the Department of Labor, where we deal with the issues of counseling for free. And at the same time, we have the Labor Activation Program that is funded through the Unemployment Insurance Fund. And that program was proposed and agreed to by both organized labor and organized business. And also the President has announced even the youth employment services, of which it has started to be implemented in this country. But House Chair, let me explain why we have the national minimum wage. There is a difference between the national minimum wage and the sectoral minimum wages that has been agreed through the collective bargaining. The national minimum wage is to support and strengthen the collective bargaining. So that is the role of the trade unions to negotiate on behalf of the workers. The difference also between the national minimum wage and the living wage. The national minimum wage, we are saying no worker must earn below 20 rands per hour. And the living wage is determined by the conditions of that particular time. That is why we allow the trade unions to deal with the issues of collective bargaining in order to look at the conditions of that particular time. And thirdly, when it comes to the review of the national minimum wage by the National Minimum Wage Commission, they will be also looking at the conditions at that particular time, and they will come up with the recommendations on how we should increase the national minimum wage figure based also on the conditions of that particular time. Honorable House Chair, looking at the minimum wages at a sectoral basis based on the collective bargaining, I wish the honorable members can do the research on what has been agreed to through the collective bargaining. For example, in the auto sector, 2 months ago, the trade union who is organizing in that particular sector has signed the agreement where the minimum wage for the petrol attendants is around 17 rands 35 cents. And at the same time, when you look at the auto sector as well, you'll find that the minimum wage based on the collective agreement is only 21 rand 90 cents. When you look at the hospitality industry in this country, you'll find that the workers were being paid through the tips, and when we introduce this national minimum wage, all workers will earn according to the agreed national minimum wage, and the tips will be done as commission for those particular workers. And when you look at the freight logistics, it's only 9 rands per hour. Now, if you are saying we need to reject the national minimum wage, I think you are taking away the opportunity for those workers who will be upgraded to earn 20 rands per hour. And also, let me just say, the decision was not taken by the government alone. The discussions were held at NETLEC, where organized labor, organized business, community that consists of various NGOs participated, and government. And this is a collective agreement through the NETLEC constituencies. And therefore, Speaker, we must take away the notion that is the government that has just introduced or agreed on this particular
Minister,
issue.
you might take your seat for a while. Yes, why are you rising, Honorable Member?
I want to ask if the minister can take a question.
Minister, are you ready for a question?
I will take a question if I still have time, but currently I don't have enough minutes. So I have to clarify some of the
Thank you, Honorable
issues.
Khawula. You may take your
There
seat.
are also
House
members
Chairperson.
who are saying,
Could I be second in line for a question as well? Thanks.
there are
I
also,
didn't allow you to speak,
there are
so
also
I haven't heard.
members, there
Continue.
are also members, House Chair, who are saying we have refused for the new federation to have a seat at NETLEC. There is a policy that guides on how the federation should apply when they want to have seats at NETLEC. When you look at the registration of the federation that you are talking about, of course they were not part and parcel of the discussion at NETLEC because the agreement on the national minimum wage was signed in February 2017, and the federation was registered on March 2017. So they were outside of that particular space. But at the same time, they have to follow the criteria. What they have to do, they have to submit their membership at NETLEC, but it should be verified by the Department of Labor, and the organizations at NETLEC must also certify themselves that those members are really members of that particular federation. And at the same time, they have to submit their financial statements that are audited. And therefore, based on that, I think they have just finished the year now, then they have to submit all the documents that are needed at NETLEC. And I don't think that there is anyone who will say they can't participate at NETLEC. When you talk about 3,500, I just want to caution the members that in South Africa, in terms of the basic conditions of employment, the workers are working 45 hours a week, of which, therefore, when you calculate the national minimum wage in terms of the figures, it's going to be more than 3,500. And the reason why we have said, let us have a phased-in approach when it comes to farm workers and domestic workers is precisely to allow that gap that the domestic workers and farm workers are earning currently. And by the way, Honorable House Chair, I hope all the members are paying the domestic workers accordingly. And I don't think that you must come in this podium knowing very well that the culprits who are not paying exactly, even in terms of the sectoral determination for domestic workers, and come and claim here that we are exploiting the domestic workers. And also, House Chairperson, I just want to say, when we took this decision, we had workshops, we even invited some countries where the national minimum wages has been established. For example, when you go to Canada, in Canada they have the minimum wage, but it is based on various municipalities and provinces. And in Mauritius as well, it is based on how the municipality is performing. And when you compare our national minimum wage with Brazil, India, and China, we are far better than what they are paying as the national minimum wage. And therefore, what we must understand is that the national minimum wage will be the floor of which saying no worker in South Africa must earn less than that amount. And then where the minimum wage is higher than the proposed national minimum wage in terms of the collective bargaining agreements, that minimum wage will remain as it is. But those that are still earning the minimum wages through the collective bargaining, which are less than the proposed national minimum wage, they will go up in order to be equal with what we have proposed as the national minimum wage. By those few words, Honorable House Chair, I thank you very much, and I've got 30 seconds. If the honorable member can raise his questions.
Honorable Khawula, you are allowed.
Thank you very much. Minister, I hear the point you are raising in terms of the bureaucratic arrangement, that you are saying that SAFTU, as a federation in South Africa, is outside NEDLEC. But the matters that they are raising are matters of a dispute of mutual interest. So if you ignore them, despite the fact that they are now engaged into a rolling mass action, which affects the economy of the country, why would you subject them to a bureaucratic process when they are forming a key stakeholder in the civic society of South Africa? The second other question that I want to raise with you.
The time is now up for you. Can we quickly?
The second question I want to raise with you, there are employers now, as a result of the minimum wage, that are threatening to release employees in the form of short term and also
Thank you very
retrench
much.
them with the view of re-employing them on the basis of the minimum wage. What are you going to do that? Because it basically threatens their own lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Come, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, the issues that were raised by SAFTU, their majority unions, which is NUMSA, the officials from the Department of Labor were requested to come and address that union in terms of what is it that we're proposing, and they were addressed, and they didn't raise those questions that they are raising in public. And at the same time, we said those unions that are not satisfied about the processes that happened at NEDLEC, they have the right to come and submit here in Parliament, because public hearings were open to everybody. And I was informed that they did make the presentations here. And if you read the Code of Good Practice that was agreed upon by all stakeholders, the commitments that were made, particularly by the employers, to say they will never retrench the workers based on the introduction of the national minimum wage. If you have that information, I will really appreciate if you can give it to us so that we can make a follow-up. Thank you very much.
I'm very sorry, Honorable Steenhuisen. We actually gave her time to respond, which went beyond. But next time you will have the time.
But House Chairperson, is not fair because the honourable member of the EFF was given two questions.
He's the one who asked first. She didn't even respond. Thank you.
If I'd been asked, given my opportunity, asked about the hypocrisy of the EPWP
don't now. Okay, honourable members, that concludes our debate and the business for the day. The House is adjourned.
Zolilwela, Izwela, Zolilwela, Izwela, Izwela, Izwela me, Izwela me, Izwela me, Izwela me.